Alright guys, we're back with part 2. Now we come to what might be a surprising entrant to some. Number 4 is the 2013 Gripersaurus. Now hadrosaurs are like the token prey item that would be uninteresting but for their head crests. And what's even more boring than hadrosaurs is hadrosaurs without head crests, which describes the saurolophine hadrosaurs. But there's a certain appeal to me of a plain vanilla hadrosaur since I was first introduced to the boring duckbill Anatosaurus, and I don't even have one. And even Edmontosaurus models now all feature that dunce cap of Regalis, and good luck finding an Anactans. For that reason, I'm glad to have this. Not just a boring hadrosaur, but one sculpted not as an afterthought, but so meticulously. Now consider that this is 9 years old, yet look at that fine detail in the scales. Now this was one of the most intricately sculpted models I've had for years, and even now it looks good. At 23 centimeters or 9 inches and an estimated 8.2 meters or 27 feet, this is delightfully around 1:35 scale. The pose is a lively amble that gives off a feeling of elegance you often see in well-sculpted hadrosaurs. The letdown, the paint application, and worse than that, the inconsistency of that paint application. Now look at how beautifully the grey is faded here in the tail, the thighs, the flank, the head, helping to add to the grace and elegance. Look at the eyes that are so carefully painted. Now look at the complete uniformity of colour in the arms and feet, and these pyramidal scutes which have actually been found. It's almost like someone started work on these washes and then suddenly quit work. It's really sad and yet typical of many of Safari's models. Number 3 is the 2018 Triceratops. Now Triceratops is the poster boy for ceratopsians, so it was great to get this update. This is yet another Doug Watson sculpt. It definitely has a presence. Now with ceratopsians, the bow plan is so well known, we instinctively have a feel if it looks right, and this looks immediately right. The compactness of the body, the proportions, and the posture of the arms and legs, the unclawed 4th and 5th digits. The pose is really good too, with a sense of potential action in the various lines of flow throughout. The large polygonal scales, some of them with nippling, is what we've seen in the Lane specimen. I wish the scales on the frill were less uniform, with smaller scales present as well. This model is about 22 centimeters or 8.6 inches long, and for an 8 meter or 26 foot adult, this is about 1:36 scale. Now color-wise, there's a nice fade in the body, the face, and even the roots of the horns. Unfortunately, it suffers from the uniform paint in the keratinous bits, like the horns here, the hooves, and these epoxipitals. And these frill patterns are also too simplistically painted. Now other than that, This was my most updated Triceratops at that point, an excellent study in anatomy, and I'm delighted to have this sculpt. Doug Watson is known as an expert in sculpting ceratopsians, and it's obvious to see why. We now come to number 2, this 2006 Dunkleosteus. Now just look at that paint application. Metallic gold with these markings so well painted. You get sharper demarcated stripes here that look like real patterning to me instead of just being slopped on. Yet you also have very subtle mottling going on here. Now this really jumps out and makes me think, now wait a minute, a mass-produced non-PNSO figure can look like this and cost this price? And this came out in 2006, so it's been 16 years. So why can't they do this on more of their sculpts, especially today? That's a real puzzle and true pity. Now until PNSO came along with its Dunkleosteus, I never saw the need for another one. Sculpted by, can you guess who? Now before we get to the final model, there are 3 honorable mentions. Yes, I know I'm cheating, but there are just so many good ones. First is the 2017 Giganotosaurus. There was a time when T-Rex was the only mega predator, and I'll always be grateful to the Carnegie collection for making manifest so many others. Indeed, I still have my Carnegie's Giganoto here. But an updated version was long overdue, and along came this one from Safari as an independent offering. At 39 centimeters or 15.4 inches, and an estimate of 12 to 13 meters makes this 1 to 31 to 1 to 33 scale. I love this model for the sinister stalking pose that, while full of menace, isn't blatantly violent, and this is enabled by having a base, something I always support in theropods because it allows nice proportions without tripods or clown feet, and here you can really feel the fluidity of movement. The paint application lacks subtlety, although here in the body, the stripes are faded and hints at some translucency. Unfortunately, here in the head, the tongue, you can see how starkly these are painted in just one flat color. Then there's the excellent 2018 Doug Watson Regaliceratops. Now here I need to only show you the extreme detail in the scales. With quite a nice color fade here. And compare these more individually sculpted belly scales to the Triceratops. And the very carefully painted, beautiful blue eyes. And yet the slack paint application of keratinous features like these occipitals, which surely must be the main highlight of this ceratopsian, is so jarring it cost it a spot on the actual list of 10. And third, we have the 2008 Postosuchus. Now this is a precious rare Triassic Rawisuchian, a very underrepresented group. Thank the maker for walking with dinosaurs, for exposing the general public to many prehistoric animals like this, including a visual you just can't unsee. The painting, especially for its time, was pretty good, and although as you can see here in the back, it's a little rough, some effort was made to create a softer look here in these stripes and mottles. The golden eyes are cleanly painted, as are these spinal scutes here. And although current thought inclines towards bipedalism, I still really like the idea of a prowling Postosuchus that immediately recalls for me the Walking with Dinosaurs series. And now to round out my 10 favorite safaris, number 1 is the 2017 Feathered T-Rex. Now this deserves a video of its own. The idea of a feathered T-Rex was met with great resistance. However, it didn't take long for the proliferation of models featuring such. My first was the 2015 Collectae, which decided feathers weren't enough and jazzed up the colours too. But where Gondor calls, Rohan will answer, and Safari came back with this, though a little late. Now this is an amazing 1:35 to 1:40 of scale model, bringing not just a bunch of feathers, but many updates to the look as well. This Doug Watson sculpt complements his Triceratops so well. By the way, does it seem like this video almost feels like a Doug Watson showcase? Now first, it's thick and heavy. I mean, it's almost like an improvised weapon. It accounts for the gastralia, which is something that's been surprisingly overlooked. Then we have the detail, not just one but 2 different types of plumage. On the body you'll see these filamentous feathers, on the head are these more pugnacious ones. It's a nice departure from this kind of look, though I'm not sure how they would evolve. And while we're here, just look at that head. It's well proportioned. No shrink-wrapped fenestrae. And still fresh bite marks from facial biting from another Tyrannosaurus. Look at how nice the colours are. And in the unfeathered areas, look at how fine these scales are on the snout, the mandible, the belly, the legs, even the soles are scaled. I mean, this model fits right in with the PNSOs on the shelf. When you have these 3 different textures, it really is very aesthetically interesting. Unlike many great models marred by poor paint apps, there's no such thing here. The coloration is superb in terms of the color scheme, but also the execution. Look at how naturally these colors blend into one another. The only unfortunate thing is this very rough brushing of white here, which is rather jarring. It's so good as the rest of the model that this eyesore is easily overlooked. While Safari and Doug Watson really pulled out all the stops here, and this is the result. It's obviously a showcase piece and shows what Safari Ltd could accomplish if it wanted to. It's an example of what a good model does. Not only is it wonderfully sculpted, painted and accurate, it gets you thinking and opening your mind to possibilities. Now 2017 was really a bumper year, with the feathered T-Rex, the Giganotosaurus, the Diplodocus and the Coelophysis. I really wish that Safari would have another good year like that again. I really have a fondness for Safari. Of the triumvirate of accuracy, sculpt and paint application, they consistently offer the first 2, and yet frustratingly are often let down by the third. The work and research done by the sculptors should be glorified and even enhanced. instead of being obscured by slop jobs that don't do it justice. And yet, as you sometimes see, they can do a good job. And that's a real frustration because from what we've seen today, cost doesn't preclude having good, even outstanding paint jobs. But despite all this, I have to say that Safari Ltd gives us models that make safe and affordable toys for children and yet lets kids grow up with an accurate picture of what dinosaurs look like, and that will always have tremendous value. So enormous credit needs to be given to Safari and also, of course, to Doug Watson. So I think that will do it for today. It was really hard to keep it to 10, and in fact, there are 2 others that deserve special mention, so I'm saving them for another video. Plus the 3 honorable mentions, yes, I've really cheated here. So tell me, what are your top 10 Safari Ltd models? I'd really love to know. Take care guys, and I'll see you soon with another video.